Put away your timers. They have their own timers. And the last thing we need is 37 timers going up 4 seconds before the 1AC ends.
2040.
They can keep track of their own time.
Did that thing start already?
Yes.
Fantastic. The United States federal government should establish and enforce a constitutional right to education, guaranteeing that all children in the United States receive equal access to an excellent elementary and secondary public education, and should increase funding to a level necessary to accomplish this goal. Contention 1 is Make America Smart Again. There are massive opportunity gaps in education now. Millions are affected. Robinson, 15, education opportunity relegates 10 million students into low-income neighborhoods and millions more minority students reported performing teachers, substandard facilities, inferior opportunities. The U.S. invests in high-income districts more than low-income districts. The center does possess the resources capacity to address the disparities as the gap in wealth has grown. The achievement gap has widened. The achievement gap must also be closed to ensure that students possess educational skills necessary to contribute to the economy. School funding remains unfair. The latest studies prove ELC 17 public school funding continues to be unfair and unequitable, depriving millions of opportunity. No improvement since the end of the Great Recession. No change to the vast differences across these states. Most of the outdated models that are the cause of the persistent disparity between districts. Different states with high-level funding for students in many states and entire regions. The schools are woefully underfunded, depriving them of qualified teachers, support staff, and reasonable class sizes, and current system inevitably fails. Put away the state's counter plan, Tyler, Ogletree, and succeed. Despite decades of state-level litigation, most changes have failed to provide equal access. Most states have continued to build systems funded by property taxes that vary greatly depending upon the child's zip code. Significant reforms can lead to improved educational and social outcomes. The NBER found that decreasing spending by 25% per student through allocation to education can erase the attainment gap between students of low income and non-poor families. And educational inequality directly threatens national security and destroys U.S. leadership. CFR 12. The education crisis is a national security crisis. Failure poses 5 distinct threats to national security. Threats to growth and competitiveness, physical safety, IP, global awareness, student cohesion, military might is no longer sufficient. National security is closely linked to human capital. Human capital is as strong or as weak as public schools. Competition and globalization require higher education, and those poorly educated Americans cannot, especially effectively, compete. Highly educated workforce, increasing productivity and growth. Growth is necessary to finance everything else. Schools fail. This industry constrains growth and limits innovation and competitiveness. 75% of youth are not qualified to join the armed services. Schools are failing to prepare enough scientists, mathematicians, engineers to staff the military, intel agencies, aerospace, and defense industry. Shortage of skilled human capital in place, personal costs, and the military ability to develop and deploy technologies and deter adversaries. Lack of fully qualified people is an threat to national security. Cyber technology is increasing. The U.S. is not prepared because there's not enough people with the expertise without the right to more tech will not do much good. The growing gap between educated and uneducated is increasing in isolation and fear. This causes the U.S. to turn inwards and become less capable of stabilizing support funding, equal and opportunities achieved in the achievement gap, having direct impact on national security. Strong generally solve all those disads. 9 and 10. Military powers used to provide protection for allies and assistance to friends. Military resources frame agendas and persuade governments. Military power restructures foreign policies. The fact that military power is not always sufficient does not mean responsibility to structure and global calculation. Military force helps to provide minimal degree of order. Military power is to global power as economic order as oxygen is to breathing. It is absence dominates all else, and relative decline creates a power vacuum, guarantees conflict. Gore and 13. The U.S. cannot withdraw without sucking the other system. U.S. power holds the international order together. Start taking away the fundamental building blocks of the international order, particularly military power. The results are major ability, increased conflict rate, rapid proliferation of nuclear weapons, economic dislocation, and serious threats to security. Educational inequality cements political inequality that deprives people of all other basic rights that are key to democracy. White and succeed. Zip codes often determine education. Demonstrated practices such as unequal school funding exist because education is not presented as a fundamental right. This creation of fundamental right will develop unequal and discriminatory practices. Education that should be linked to the Constitution, guarantee liberty, voting, and freedom of expression, quality, and level education has direct impact. Citizens with low-level education is simply reflected in both education and contributes to effective participation, exercise freedom of expression, continue to protect all of the fundamental rights, and Supreme Court provides to recognize education fundamental right as a discriminatory and inconsistent treatment of education rights among the states. Unequal funding is raised without the guidance from the court. Each state has a protection is met by haphazard and wavering. This is the existential threat causes global warming and nuclear war. Chomsky 14. Warming and nuclear weapons are diagnosed. State policy is committed to celebrate each of these threats in the interest of concentrated private power that has determined state policy. Final century of human civilization is if the current policies persist. We, as a right to age by some combination of skill, luck, and divine intervention, policymakers play roulette with the face of the rate of the species, environmental destruction, and nuclear war. We face the possibility of destroying the prospect for decent existence, and not so distant future. It's imperative to face the question of how policy decisions are made and what we can do to alter them before it's too late. Contention 2 is we have all the I-laws, the best I-laws. Educational inequality makes U.S. non-compliant with H.R. SAD. Urgent 7. The U.S. appears to be non-compliant in important ways. The key reasons of discrimination and economic disparity. Schools are rapid segregation and inequality. The federal government has not developed a national plan that would eradicate discrimination as required. Education regulates the states to make funding discretionary and non-uniform. The responsibility to provide the rights to education is not vested in the national government, which is required under the convention. It does not give citizens the call for action on the federal law. The right is being hindered. It does not make the national government accountable for uniform education. Therefore, it cannot be in compliance. Non-compliance of education undermines global U.S. human rights credibility and democracy promotion. Holland and the overwhelming majority of HR instruments explicitly recognize the right to education. The U.S. has often been portrayed as the paramount of democracy and leader of human rights. This vision goes to deteriorate as the U.S. fall behind. Recognizing the right to education would avoid this. The U.S. would demand in the stance by openly recognizing the right to send a legitimate world leader to promote the freedom and democracy ideal. The U.S. must first recognize the right to education in its own backyard. HR and democracy promotion is key to stopping rising authoritarianism from replacing the current order. Yalowitz 17. The U.S. global influence power challenged by China and Russia. Russia and China are leading the way, advocating internationally for alternative models based on the repression of human rights. The alternative model is gaining ground. Democratic countries rarely ever go to war. 11 actions are concluded. The national security interest requires Americans to support democracy, not to do so would ignore exceptions of the international order. The democracy is considered for nothing more important than being true to American values and principles and protecting them globally. Existential threat, multiple scenarios. Kazaprov 17. Chair warfare, refugee and military intervention resulting in America losing the vacuum. The Soviet Union's existential strength today is not found on the map, but it is very well. Terrorist extremist parties, North Korea and aggressive Russia want to turn the war back. They are diving into the U.S. has retreated. American leadership against the home of America cannot lead the war to democracy, human rights. There is no unity in importance of these things. The spread of democracy is the only proven remedy for nearly every crisis that plays support for war, famine, poverty, terrorism, all generated and exasperated by authoritarian regimes. American leadership is required. There is no one else. There is no weapon or wall that is more powerful. Contention 3 is our solvency is huge. Only a federal right to education solves compliance. Your take 7. Federal action needs to be taken. The federal government can bring financial resources, visible leadership, and coordinating capacity and focus. The federal government can no longer hide behind these states. Federalization might be the viable option, might be the only viable option to come to compliance with international standards without alleviating the racial discrimination, economic disparity. The U.S. would never pass muster under the guidelines. Funding would need to be reallocated, more equal distribution occurred. It would be unacceptable to continue the current structure of local taxes. When Tyler says states, ask him where the cash is at. Baker 17. Money does not make a difference in education. Have little basis in empirical research. Does money matter? Yes, aggregate measure are positively associated with outcomes. In direct test with relationship, money matters. In schooling resources that cost money matter. Yes, resources are positively associated with outcomes. Do state school finances reform matters? Yes, sustained improvements to the level of distribution of funding can lead to improvements in level of distribution and outcomes, more equitable and adequate allocation of resources. Financial inputs provide the necessary underlying condition for improving equity and adequacy of outcomes. And equal access to education closes the opportunity gap. Robinson 15. Strengthen the federal role in reestablishing the foundation for equal access to education. The federal government is guaranteed equal opportunity because it's only government with the capacity is sufficient to solve in the U.S. and pursue equal access to education. The primary goal will break the link between low-income and minority student status and inferior education opportunities. This embraces the closing the opportunity gap is essential. Prerequisites to closing the achievement gap. Embracing racially and economically diverse schools is essential, given the research regarding the harms of racial and class isolation, the benefits of diversity. Have I mentioned federal action is key yet? Robinson 16. A comprehensive federal agenda requires the assistance of all three branches. The executive could use the authority to accommodate incremental shift through modern reform performance without any Congress or courts will lack the comprehensive nature. Ensuring equal access will demand legislation will set the powerful message that may encourage greater state and local buy-in. The courts can overturn rights. We go to the health. The Constitution does not protect education, the fundamental right. The states have the efforts and falling short. It was wrongly decided it should be overturned and provide consistent and powerful federal remedy to address these disparities. The courts can hold the 14 members of prohibition of any. Just mark it a prohibition. That's fine. Right where we go. That is the Robinson card system.
Yeah, it's all good. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. I just want to make sure I read the 1AC correctly. That operates within the utilitarian framework. There's not an independent decision rule to inequality.
We have not read a D-row card.
Yeah, perfect. Okay. I want to start on some of the funding questions. How do we know when funding has been successful? Or in other terms, what is the metric or what is the standard that is used to calculate the success of students pre-funding and then post-funding?
Oh, sure. I'll be really clear with you first, Tyler. Things like graduation rates, you can also use test scores, etc. All these things are different metrics that could be used to provide an excellent education. Our Robinson card and the 1AC is very good about the equitable distribution and the way that those things will change.
Anything besides graduation rates and test scores?
Do you need anything else, Mike?
sorry, can you repeat the question?
So,
Anything
how
else
do you
besides-
know funding is successful? Abuli said graduation rates and test scores. Is there anything else you'd like to throw out?
Of metrics to be able
Yeah.
to test whether it's successful? I mean, I'm sure there are other metrics.
Okay, graduation rates are sort of skewed by things like Rahm Emanuel in Chicago, altering sort of Chicago things to
Yeah,
like
the plan
super-
changes that.
You changed Chicago's standards for graduation rates?
It's an effect of the plan. Yeah, given that Rahm Emanuel's plan is like, you have to have a plan
I
once you
disagree.
graduate, okay?
I
You
would
can just
also
interrupt me
disagree
and disagree.
because there's a right
That's
to
kind of rude.
education. They would not be able to be deprived
It's okay.
their diploma once they pass
Okay.
because it's called a
That's fine.
constitutional right.
I'm going to
All right.
center it around graduation test scores. The hedge internally, the U.S. is a geographic island. We spend as much as the next 20 countries combined. We have a strong patent system, which is what your internal link evidence is about.
No, it's
Why
not.
is education?
So you said nothing relevant. My internal link evidence has 5 specific arguments that are key.
Yeah.
Only one which you have addressed. The first one about the money that we spend in our patents. The card says those things are irrelevant if we do not have the
No.
people that are able to use them. That is a quote from the card.
Yeah, I
I'm sorry.
agree, but our patent system leads the world in terms of
Our
things
patent
that
system is
matter.
irrelevant if no one can operate the technology that we've patented.
Fair. I guess we
Okay, then.
disagree about the scope
I
of
guess you
internal link.
disagree that machines need
My
operators.
follow-on question, though, is
All right.
how much relative decline is key to cause a country to preemptively strike the U.S. and initiate a
So
nuclear war?
preemptive conflict is not the only scenario for conflict with hedge
But it's the one I'm asking about.
Sure. We have made arguments about why there are challengers now and the brink is coming. That's in our second advantage.
That card says Brink was coming 2013. Why?
No,
not?
there's a card from 2017.
I think that's
These are facts.
unlimited campaign finance, Gillen's and Page study that says that what we think about Congress is irrelevant, so on and so forth. Why is education key?
The reason why what we think about Congress is irrelevant is because the majority of people do not vote. We've got a fantastic card that says people that are more educated will actually vote and be more educated about what the government is doing.
Okay.
The plan makes them more educated.
Why
so I
is
guess they would vote,
education
so
more
what we
important
think matters.
than populism?
Those things are all happening because of lack of education.
Oh, I thought it was the naming. It's for naming too. Like then you have. I don't know. It just like gives track of it line by line.
Did y'all see the page you sent out?
Yeah. Dude, I make my own size 20 bucks. Oh, good life. Yeah.
On his report, it's like 50%. You can't see the words. It's like 4 people.
Look, however Tasia gets down, that's how he gets down.
For international law, inequality. 4 off, international law, inequality.
We want to add a degree of difficulty.
First off, it's a ban counterclaim the United States federal government should abolish private and paid schools, state adult schools, and apply compulsory attendance in public K-12 schools in the United States. Only banning private schools solves inequality. Trumansky 15 education not occur as parents community. Private equal funding school will not occur as the public parents can send their children to private school. Minority education receive quality education while the schools can try to do wealthy white children. In order to create a unitary system that can support expectation for inequality is considered medical care. Healthy people had to receive the public schools and any other quality will be directly linked to schools and promote the abolition of private and paid schools and the creation of the districts. Every child will be required to attend. Their segregation funding can be achieved through this approach, but not otherwise. The states cannot plan the 50 states and vote to the United States to establish an enforced state-based constitutional right to education that requires all children in respective states to receive equal access to an excellent elementary and secondary public education and adopt state-based systems of school financing to accomplish that goal. Establishing education as a fundamental right solves only 6. State constitutions can be changed as well to be especially only 10 Europe's continuous rights, English, modern, science, social text, that define education's fundamental rights, and now gives the courts the hook to hang their students on mandating specified reform that gives political coverage devices and designation books, that considers that ensure that inequitable schemes that do not remain in force are considered that there will be specific practical and misdemeanors restricting whatever government took action towards would examine which steps and strike down laws compelling government and especially constitutional men would give the courts of nation with maintaining dysfunctional system would simply not be an option. Statewide financing systems alone solve ground 13 states should adopt state financing system provided all non-federal resources districts that no longer have to raise funds for public property taxes and all districts receive such resources funding will be based on specifically non-property values and not being sale funding is essential element of high quality education spending. The economy is high now. Conservatism is key. GWAC 17 United States one of the strongest comebacks. But surprising pressure the crisis against reduced unemployment and responsible sustainability from larger restored GDP expanded down 10% that compares with 6.64% of the euro. Upward spending including unemployment to recession levels. Inflation now defined sectors more stable. Education spending and regulation crushes growth. Real and expanding fails to increase our growth of federal government shrinking economy enjoy expansion compared to the deal the same. Every dollar must be taxed or regarded or a stimulus and merely distributed to something that productivity or employment expansion weaken the private sector by directing resources to life productive using independent income growth. New spending power is creating the advocates of human safe resources outside of American citizens or job outs of banks in which quickly lending Congress borrowers beyond to just leave a GDP unchanged and spending only on education increase productivity but only if the government does not crowd out and if the government is more competent like governments are barely taxes reduce incentives and resulting in a motivated workforce as well as incentives for government education destroys existing markets by third-party payers resulting in overconsumption and necessary balance of active expansions reduce growth no matter how it's financed growth by markets but not Washington economic decline leads to nuclear war. Thompson 15 leaders and spend the Royal Chicago debates with the 8 foreign sentiments contemplated reports are envy refuse to turn nuclear shift could happen public risk in the world economy. These could have unforeseen consequences security deterrence could those countries powered by cable inside work function a limited war the other part third party engaging convention conflict of like Washington or Beijing intervene the politics the international will pass by hurdles Trump species key it's also going to come out by $20 tax forms by day when you look like coverage short travel taken from monster companies in education months that headlines health tax companies geographic will get like that it doesn't cover the we can send it to Congress can walk and chew gum, trying to your tax form is easier to place it about people pass the 40 easily. That will put pressure on the Senate. Restore capital formation, productivity, real wages, and growth in leaders. Or to fight for reconciliation, lower taxes, to will foster prosperity. The Trump will fight the plan. Education week 17 represent those representing civil rights issues and education party were fighting worlds for more dramatic budget to the short public budget public schools disbanded Trump's which got 20% of education budget teacher quality organizations are struggling. It's about foreign research and everybody looking for we might be going backward in major education initiative will have Congress and poll rights. A time of losers lose, it kills the agenda. Calendar 16, you may be letting Trump orderly that on the Bush should be considered automatic. He is going to want something in return that's how Washington works. The biggest and longest lasting presidential competition will come from other Republicans. Republican unity won't be automatic. It's easier to imagine GOP's opposition with public. Trump appears not to be in control, loses early fights with Congress. The patent expiration will dismay biopharma tax for themselves. Fortune 12-6. To replicate discussions for new weapon de-liking pharma, device with new drug version along with spend direct acquisition, there was a drug, that were popular by buying smaller people farmers, and the pursuit of the next acceptable blockbuster drugs, successful transitions are, further planning represents as patent cease valuations are, hovering your historical survey, drive by election, versus reparations like little benefit, biotech and pharma with a cash and designed by mid-cap companies, pharma innovation solves disease that causes extinction, Engelhardt, 8 farm-written pharmaceuticals to be celebrated with, which is that sports innovation power is one of the most efficient, effective ways to direct human energy innovation that serves to maintain human species in never changing conditions by which inject network and at any time emerge threat human and survival innovations that try to prevent mortality though the international law advantage there's no internal forward collapse. The U.S. has been occupied for 10 years according to Ehrlich, I-Law, HR for democracy promotion, they all fail. Similar control of international laws outlook the expectations have been approximately 182 wars around the world since 1945 the 31 wars army fought the United States has been intervened several resolutions that there was involved in over 100 international Jacob since 1945 countries have been involved in as many as the United States invasion of Iraq, Afghanistan, imperial so much of the S5 states failed to maintain peace. Education is not key. International U.S. tortures, indefinite detainees and George Rice people, domestic the death penalty and over-incarceration, Democratic peace Ron Larson, Democratic peace the drugs were brought conclusion for the short period of non-history with very few cases before the 20th century drug actions, and antiquity fought against one another, political inequality, burning down abolish conflict of interest between competing states of market peace theory, does not care for the effects of the nationalist and imperialist ideologies on the way the Democratic nations think about it, or the idea that reducing the number of the non-democratic makes more or less likely just the fancy classic interests between states are going away, the more democratic the Democratic states there are in the world, the more likely it is that two or more of them will eventually fight with one another. There's no terminal impact. Don't let this spin out of an existential. Don't let this spin as an existential debate. Trump has already destroyed this advantage. More than 17, few shows the world thinks that we have already lost our minds by handling the steering wheel to a lunatic in Germany. The confidence of the president dropped to 86% to 11%. The late Canada dropped from 18% to 22%. Mexico had the world record of just 5% global revolution. Trump is diminishing the American power by making it tougher to win allies. Our untold depends on soft power to give us allies to fight in Iraq and Afghanistan and consist of global support for sanctioning Iran. It yields Pearson has the foundation for international cooperation that thwarted the terrorist attacks. How badly Trump has depleted our storage soft power of the world. May has more faith in the leaders of Russia and China than the leader in America. Our friends are worried with good reason. The inequality of right to education fails. Many other policies are also key. RB11, empirical evidence suggests it will take more than improved resources to address inequality. Right to education cannot alone alleviate inequality if the right is understood in terms of education funding. So that we have to reach well beyond schools to be considered poverty education, to teacher perceptions, expectations, or the labor market as factors shaping outcomes. Recognizing the education laws advice, we have to combine this right with larger effort to reduce poverty and to discourage also new approaches to discrimination throughout society. Many factors affect outcomes, not related to the resources that others relate to the education system and the manner in which education is delivered, and many that are unrelated to society. Schools aren't key to inequality, structural racism, economic stratification, and collapse of the American dream. Funding is not key to schools either. Handshake 15, spending doubled by the discourse barely by budget, but more and more of the same is unlikely to yield better results. Spending is not going to spending is not improving. How much money spent is much more important. Schools have not systematically used additional funds in the way that lead to student outcomes. Given the decades of unproductive increases, it's mistakenly with greater spending. Education is not key to military or hegemony impacts, which is related to walls and 12. Foreign countries only after the income levels can spend more than the next 20 nations combined. It has allies and leader in the science and technology, also makes the top 7% votes. 180 countries' education performance out of the states of whose children not perform. The United States is the potential of bearing major blunders to K-12 educational countries like the US for decades. There's no relative decline. In fact, it's empirically denied by sequestration, Trump blunders, and a slew of other things to their 2013 evidence. There's no leadership or hedge impact. 116 this century, America has failed to achieve the security objective. Here's a list of getting nuclear weapons, preventing an ongoing nuclear weapons in Iraq and Afghanistan, stable jihadist extremism. The United States influence at the airport, reconcile Russia, resisting China's challenge, brokering a settlement between Israel and Palestine, only secure successes of avoidance of a direct major attack. All the rest have been a total failure. These goals that America should have been able to achieve. Leadership does not correspond to reality. The education is not key to political inequality. Page 15. Education systems are necessary for a true urban proxy. However, because of the disproportionate influence of the money, it is insufficient. Those who have more money than have more influence on withstanding education. Education may be hollow victory unless larger political reform occurs. There's no fascism impact or launches of checks and balances. Preventing democracy is resilient. Democracy is resilient. 17. To the risk with Trump, that there's a fairly high probability that I'll go from words to actions. There may be inertia built into the separation of powers or expectations. Trump and secretaries and advisors will eventually take into more established decisions. There's no impact to warming heart. 15 IPCC was or widely alarmist. Each United States discussion based on the production without a reference to technological developments or adaptation. All scenarios are assumed. Only negation and negative impacts of growing adaptation attributed anything, all things bad to global warming. There's no basis for weather threats or malnutrition.
Malnutrition.
Yeah, good.
Let's start with the completion of the counter plan.
Oh, status quo is always logical options.
Perfect. Do you fiat uniformity?
No.
No. If you do not fiat uniformity and all the 1AC cards specifically say a uniform, universal access to education is key, how do you plan to solve that?
The counter plan has every state amend the Constitution with the same text of the plan.
And it says that all those states need to
Every
be
single
equal.
state, every single person in that state gets an equal access to education.
Yes, but our argument is all the states need to be equal.
Yeah, and then
everybody
your
in one
2AC
state
word will be
needs to
interstate disparities. We'll say that every country or every state will have such a good education
Okay,
that the disparities
sure.
don't matter.
How do you decide to fund the act?
The states will fund it.
Where do the states get that money?
We fiat it, but also
Yeah, so I have two things. One real quick
It's
framing
constitutional,
thing is
not
that,
access
yeah,
to-
no, I understand. So two things. One is that same question of like funding specification applies to the affirmative, obviously.
The federal
Second,
government
and-
can definitely spend, the
I
states
understand.
cannot.
Second,
Try one more time.
and more important thing, the counter plan creates a state-specific model of funding, which means it ends the requirement for property taxes and local funding of schools, and
Then
shifts
where do you get the money
Hold
from?
on. And shifts resources from state programs and other state programs or deficit spending in the few states
You
where
can't
that is
deficit
allowed
spend.
for.
The plan
Can I
calls
ask
Some
a
for
quick
states
question
can't
about that?
deficit spend.
You said that the states will share money if you're not fiating
No,
uniformity.
no,
How
no,
do the states share money?
It's not state
But
sharing.
then what
money.
about like Alabama, who has no major city, and like they're all just like, how do you distribute the money there?
I understand. It reorganizes or reorients.
But where
the
does
way-
Alabama get any money from? It doesn't matter.
Alabama has a budget.
move
Alabama
on.
has some taxes coming in. The problem
How
is
does the
that
plan
status
deal
quo-
with Rodriguez?
How does it deal with Rodriguez?
Yes.
It doesn't immediately. Our
So
argument is the
you
better
have
venue-
no way,
Hold on,
so you're
wait,
gonna
one
have the
second.
states all
Hold
amend
on.
their constitution
So two things.
illegally to violate Supreme
No.
Court precedent.
And
And you
the
think it'll spill up instead of get struck down?
Two things. One, our argument is that they can venue shop for state courts, which are a better venue because there's less
Supreme
central
Court
pressure.
has precedent.
And two is follow-on, which we'll get to in a little bit.
That gets struck down because you violated precedent.
No, they'll
All
listen 'cause I'll-
right, losers lose leak on politics.
Yep.
Where do you think you have uniqueness for this argument after healthcare, border funding,
So,
travel ban one,
We'll make
travel
link
ban two,
distinctions.
return
We'll
to
make link
fascist.
distinctions that apply. The GOP will support Trump with any part of
GOP
the.
unity
Let me
after
finish
healthcare has failed
answering.
3
Let me
times.
finish answering the question.
That's what
the
you're gonna go
GOP
for.
will support Trump on all levels for the Republican agenda.
Is there
The
even a
only
bill for
distinction is
tax
the
reform?
plan is a liberal move.
Has there been a bill for tax reform?
Yes, there's a draft. There's all drafts.
Has anybody seen said draft?
The draft has been published by the White House. It will pass.
That specific bill. Do you have any cards to say that specific bill includes reparations for former tax?
We'll read evidence and we've read
So
evidence.
you do not have
and
that card.
They made promises. There's a lot of
Trump makes a lot of promises. I agree.
So let's talk about what they have done well in cross-examination. The one thing that we didn't see was a lot of clarification of things. There's not like, hey, and not that there's anything wrong with occasionally saying, hey, what's the third argument on the case or something like that. And I suspect maybe we might take a little bit of time to clean up some flows, or maybe we can group think some of our flows. Maybe on the case we missed a few arguments. Maybe our spending disad is just like spending DA and some stuff there. Some of us are going to have to fill that in. If we're debating, it's fine to ask some questions about that, but that's not what they're doing. They're trying to set up arguments about the state's counter plan and whether or not the states are going to solve. Guessing, like a lot of these debates this year are going to be, they're going to talk about, can the states solve this? And in fact, it started before that. I would say, from my perspective, there might be a little bit too much tag team cross-examination going on in both cross-examinations. I think that we have some strong personalities and everybody's got a lot to say, much like many of the debates that I see. And the biggest thing I'd say about that is, there's nothing wrong with telling your partner, hey, I got this. Like, it's fine, hey, I need a little help on this question, hey, maybe I need a little bit of help on this question. But at the same time, taking cross-examination back over, like, I have it from here on out, and maybe just a little self-restraint. The last kind of comment that I'll make is, one of the things I liked about both the 1AC and the 1NC is you get a little bit of a personality, not too much. I want people to be professional, but a little bit of bully humor kind of mixed into the tags, not too much of it, but that's bully. And so, I judged bully since high school, so I know what's up, I know what's coming, and that's fine, but he doesn't overdo it. And the same thing, Tage's all business. And I personally prefer that a little bit, but I want bully to be bully, and it doesn't bother me. But again, because first of all, he is amusing, and most of you are not. And so you have to kind of be you, and you have to kind of have to recognize that you are. And even if he wasn't, he didn't overdo it. And then Teja just gave us, I'm here for business, I got something to accomplish, and I'm going to get it done. You ready? Marge?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, is everyone ready for the order? First, the inequality advantage, or Make America Smart Again. Then, the international law advantage, also known as we have all the I law, the best I law. Then, the ban private schools counterplan. Then, the 2NR, sorry, the state's counterplan. After that, the tax reform disadvantage, which currently has no bill.
They lied about it.
And then after that is the economy disadvantage. Does anyone need me to repeat the order? I'll go over it real quick one more time. Inequality, international law, ban private schools, the state's counterplan, the tax reform DA, the econ DA. Is everyone good? Yeah. All right. You can't be ready if you're chit-chatting. Education is key to resolving inequality. It gives access to then opportunities that are no longer otherwise not afforded. Their Darby evidence is that assumes the plan is only funding allocation, which is merely a part of the plan, not the curriculum intervention. State choices shape structural racism and the American dream, which answers their analytic. That's the Robinson evidence. You should reject their Hanashik evidence. They are widely rejected by academics for using pseudo-statistics to confirm their studies. He only cites Jersey as an example, which is an irrelevant, stupid state, but independently, future studies prove that it went the other way. 75% of high school graduates are not eligible to be in the military, which is why changing education access is key. Hegemonic decline is structurally inevitable in the status quo. Military spending is irrelevant if we don't have people to use the weapons that we are buying. That's the CFR evidence. Sequestration and funding cuts are irrelevant to our impact because we're not a funding argument, but rather we are a capability argument, which is why none of your arguments apply. Hegemony is key to peace, protection of allies, deterrence, and international bargaining power. Decline changes the balance of power, which causes current conflicts to escalate. That's the Gore and the Nye evidence. Education shapes politics. It creates informed citizens and statistically decreases incarceration rates. That shapes who gets a seat at the political table. That is the Wesh evidence. Yes, there's a fascism impact. Look at the travel ban and the second travel ban. Preventing a singular ruler stops groupthink that makes violence escalation inevitable. There's no resiliency. Look at Trump. Now, heart is a hack and a climate denier. Science is 99.9% on our side. Sea level changes, migration, biodiversity loss are all existential impacts, and you should give them a failing grade in this debate for reading that card. The international law advantage. Decades of non-compliance matters now because Russia and the U.S. are challenging the democratic order. That is the Basora and the Yalowitz evidence. The warrant for international law failure in the status quo is U.S. non-compliance. The plan puts the U.S. in alignment with those norms, which solves their evidence. Education is key. It's the most universally recognized human right that other countries follow, and the U.S. does not. They're all causes assume wartime action, not peacetime international human rights protocol, which is distinct and answers their thumpers. Democracy solves war because it creates alliances that make war not in the interest of a nation. They have no answer to our backsliding impact, which is independent transition from current democracy that Russia and China are challenging, cause the transition wars that escalate. Yes, we've read terminal impacts. Kasparov and Basora described decline as an existential impact. North Korea, Russia, and China, aggression, rogue terror, famine, and poverty are all huge threats that you should care about. The plan solves despite Trump policies are more durable than a singular Cheeto. Nozzle in 17. Important reference to show the administration is neither on the face of the American rule nor the soul of the values Congress and other institutions work to defend the human rights goal, but separate word of the administration will Congress can never take the U.S. government to hold take seriously its human rights state rather. And even if the administration amounts to an egregious lapse, the best way to preserve human rights leadership is to ensure the U.S. is claims to leadership is strong enough to withstand his term in office. Counterplan. 1. Immediate action is key. The counterplan solves our internal links generations from now, well after our impacts have been evident. And 13. If every single parent sent a child to public schools would improve. That does not happen immediately. It could take generations. Children might need mediocre education. In the meantime, the banning private schools is the answer. We need a moral adjustment, not legislative one. It doesn't provide funding, which means that everyone just has to go crappy public schools, which doesn't solve any of our argument. Permutation do both federal guarantees plus private plan is the best way to rapidly improve public schools and avoid spending deficit because private schools are banned, transfer millions of public schools. This counterplan obviously links to politics, or else the permutation is able to shield the link. There's no all cause. The plan solves despite private schools by guaranteeing equal access to excellent public schools. Rich opt-out no longer matters. Multiple conditional options are a voting issue. It creates time and strategy skews. It's not reciprocal and it undermines argumentative responsibility. 1 solves their offense and is logically limited. The state's counterplan. Perm do both. It either shields the link because it looks like the courts are enforcing state action, or it proves the counterplan links because it would immediately be challenged in the courts. It doesn't solve inequality because it's not enforced. Only establishing a federal constitutional right to education enables lawsuits that enforce the plan. The counterplan doesn't overturn Rodriguez, so federal courts wouldn't enforce the counterplan. That's the Robinson evidence. They can't pay for the counterplan. States don't have the cash flow to redistribute funding inequality. That is a Robinson evidence. States like New York have a lot more money than states like Wyoming because they're irrelevant know-nothing states, but the people there deserve a right to education. The only theoretical way to pay is property taxes, which makes inequality worse because of housing discrimination. That is the Ogletree evidence. Here's more evidence. Federal funding is key, or else the states will fail. Robinson and 15 federal assistance with the essential extending capacity of states to ensure equal access to education. The federal contribution could include assistance to address opportunity and achievement. System would extend the reforms pending out of state will implement their own state response and would apply public cover to political action to support reform the federal government would generally increase its contribution to constitutional support level to the federal government of superior to distribute resources among the states level to federal funding should be addressed in the statutory capacity of states to close the opportunity of it and achievement gains. It can't solve international law. The states can't establish a constitutional right to education via the federal government. That is key to meet treaty requirements that determine the human rights credibility. That's urgent evidence. Perception matters. Country are wary of U.S. stance on education. State action is not on their radar. That's Holland. Here's more evidence they're not perceived. Banks and A. U.S. Supreme Court may be perceived globally as a resistant guaranteeing social rights and education controversy over race and funding educational will be an impediment that recognizes and allocates the right to countries and attorney can in the future take over exerted leadership, providing resources global communities like really taking notice of any 50 states of the enemy and 20 rights and education state rights of the attractive foreign jurisdiction when they look at defense and the present day makes what the Supreme Court tells even more so important. State fiat is a voter, it's contrived, not reciprocal fiat out of all acts, solvency deficit and illogical because no single decision maker could choose. They don't solve states' good education because uniformity and multi-actor fiat isn't within the literature. Reading one state as the counterplan solves all of their offense and still offers educational debate with ground for the affirmative. I will preempt, follow on it, courts links, politics links proves it wouldn't happen, Trump would never push it, nor solvency deficit prove the federal government would follow on to a bad plan. If they do follow on, it would take longer to happen than Tyler to walk from Brody to Wells, which is a long, long time. Now, tax reform. The dissent is nonsense. Trump administration has been a disaster after disaster with no political ramifications. The idea that a court case over education is the key determinative of Trump's agenda is laughable at best. Tax reform will not pass. Healthcare thumbs it will in 719. If Trump cannot get comfortable with price over here from the region, Trump's legislative agenda could be in jeopardy. The sequencing now through an intentional they want to start with healthcare because they removed the taxes from Obamacare responding fair position $1 trillion. They could apply the tax reform now. They won't have to have the agendas in parallel now. Political capital is not real. Edwards in 16. Leadership operates beyond the president's control. Enough can be working more stable factors effective voting. Ideology, personal views, and criminals constitutions by the time a president exercised influence, Congress made up their minds. Losses now, ACA repeal failure, Russia investigation, and a litany of other scandals about this Cheeto are way bigger losses than the plan. It's more likely that the plan is a win because it's something that Trump can actually get through Congress, which he needs right now. Diseases are not existential for Quar. In 17, pandemics are really likely to cause extinction. The recorded extinctions, less than 4% are ascribed to disease. None of the local leaders works other factors all to contribute to species being numerous COVID dispersed in the table of where it's also likely to be killed off by a handful of this protection killed before they respond to the for not to be lethal passions to cold love rather than kill as a host. What disease is coming? They have no reason. Innovation is key, or this bill is key right now. Patents take 10 years to make for a disease, for a vaccine to get on the market, so there's no way that strong pharma is able to solve emerging threats in the future. Court decisions don't come out until June, so tax reform or thumpers will happen by then. Form over content, because Trump getting something through Congress matters more than the substance of the bill for political capital. Silver in 16, Trump cannot run for much political wins or Congress. The United Factor doesn't give a shit. This is probably why voters like Trump. He's good power over politics versus true. His wins instead of compromise and a factor Trump can go and how much power he has. Trump can get a mileage out of assuming opponents take equal because he's usually proven right. The economy just sad. The link is not unique and conservative garbage. Debt is at $220 trillion currently, and our debt doubled under the Obama administration with no lasting effect, which disproves any reason it'll bring to the DA its resilience. Trump in 16 tells us one good knowledge of which provides the long-term stability of the U.S. economy and conversation given to the U.S. more functional than any challenging that is like to know about the stability of the U.S. economy, market economy, no impact on 14 and allows us to the financial rights of the states support to for sure to raise to great part public market conflict spending for education to keep the economy. That is the CFR evidence in the one you see. The economy is low right now. Tally 17. A rebound in traditional the economy includes the fastest pace in 70 years, but the rest of the emerging markets that will live markets that will be trying to reduce the goal. The problem is that acute corporate sector, market sector.
Ready?
Sure.
All right. The United States is 24th in literacy, 14th in education, and 17th in education testing. Why would any country ever model U.S. education policies instead of modeling more successful countries like Finland or South Korea?
That is our argument. No one models us right now because we are lagging so far behind. They do not model other countries because they are not relative great powers, which makes them sort of irrelevant. Like, who cares about Finland? Could you tell me where Finland is on the map? These are questions no one has the answer to.
So as long as the U.S. does this right to education, every other country will do a right to education. Russia,
I mean, I'm not going to say
China.
literally every country, but our argument is that we need to keep a majority of the countries in the world on the democratic side and prevent countries that are already democratic from backsliding as Russia and China are trying to force on them right now. So no, we're not saying like suddenly Putin will be like right to education, but like more recently, Finland might model, yeah.
Finland already has the best education in the world.
Sounds like we should match what they do.
Fair enough. Paris. Trump withdrew from Paris. how can one state determine global climate momentum? If it's true that California is key, why does the
But the cards on that are quite good, and I'm willing to talk to you about that another time.
That's fine. If every state has fiat and excellent education, then
No,
why?
we are questioning the ability for the states to. You can't just be like, fiat, they must be able to, because our argument is that the states, it is impossible for them to create a proper right to education because they do not have the money. The amount of taxes it would take for your counterplan to be possible, every single person in the country's state tax would have to at least triple and definitely probably more than triple for it to be possible, which means that the educational aspects are overridden by the fact that everyone's paying so much money.
The last card on
costs.
Policy presumes that Trump wins and gets something through Congress. How does a liberal education policy that imposes federal intervention?
Because Trump flip-flops all the time. Trump supporters do not care. They're like,
How would
Trump's
that be
a
a win with
he
the
doesn't
GOP?
give a shit.
The
It's not
GOP
about
would be
the
like, no.
GOP. It's about the fact that they just don't want the Democrats
It is
to do
about the
anything.
GOP because
The
it's what policy
GOP
is
will
about.
spin anything Trump does as a win for them.
Your 1C evidence says that Trump needs a win, any type of win,
Yeah,
so they
you
can go
made
to the
the
That's
next
not what
one.
our evidence
Your
says. Our
argument
evidence
is
says that
losers
Trump
lose and Trump can't get a loss.
Yeah, how
Our
is the plan a
argument
win
is
for
the
Trump?
plan. I just explained that. Because getting something through Congress is a win. So far, he has been a total failure. What does Trump have?
So
I
Trump
know this is
asserts-
your Congress process, but what has Trump done?
If
Nothing.
Trump does a liberal policy, how can it be possibly a win for the GOP?
Because
He's
Trump
do-
is
he's-
not a classic Republican. He's anti-trade in some areas. He's pro-things in the other thing. He's
The
not a
first 100
classic
days of the
Republican or
administration were
Democrat.
Trump
He's
fighting
just
liberal
Trump
policies.
doing Trump things.
All right, let's talk a little bit more about cross-examination. I think, overall, I already said that I think that their cross-examinations are great. They're setting up a lot of arguments. I liked this one a lot less of the tag team cross-ex, probably related to, my guess is, Tyler's getting his 2 and C ready, and in the other speeches, we kind of knew what we were going to say, so we had plenty of time to get involved in all the other stuff. And the one time I brutally interrupted Bart, it was to make one salient point and then he was back out. So I like that a lot. I do think I would have been interested if maybe, and again, we have, judges are great about saying, oh, here's 7 other questions that you should have asked, and they're like, well, where did you want me to ask those questions? Are the questions I asked not good? And in this instance, they're obviously asking a bunch of good questions and trying to set up their arguments. But I think asking about how much the plan spends to kind of start things off, because clearly the question of the spend, it's related to the spending disadvantage, but if you ask the 1AC how much does your plan cost, and it kind of depends on the debate. I don't know how that question would have been answered in this debate, but initially, usually affirmatives are not likely, given that they know that the spending disadvantage is likely to appear in the 1C, to say, oh, our plan spends $1 trillion or whatever this plan would actually cost. That doesn't usually sound like a question that the 1AC is going to want to give that answer to, especially since the spending disadvantage often has the problem of uniqueness. I mean, I fact check this all the time, but what's our debt right now? How much?
A little bit under 20.
Yeah, somewhere in 19 to 20 trillion dollars. So a $15 billion education program might not be that big of an impact, but if you get the affirmative team to commit to they spend $1 trillion, then now all of a sudden we're talking. But if they back off of answering that question, then what does that set up? The state's counterplan, because it's obviously a really big issue. Where are the states going to get this money? Some of the states have balanced budget amendments, so they can't deficit spend. That hasn't come out in this debate about exactly how many of those states there are, and what is the capability, as has come out in this debate, Alabama's ability to reallocate their resources, how many other resources do they have in their budget, etc. The bigger that the 1AC commits to spending, the better they can use those arguments against the state's counterplan, but then they might have a problem with the spending DA. Maybe some clarification of that earlier in the debate can help people. You ready, Tyler? Thank you.
Order is states with a sizable overview. They called it. Then the spending dissad. The ban counterplan. The I-law advantage. And then the inequality. Let me give people a second, and then I'll say it one more time. Debate. All right. One more time. It states with an overview, spending, the ban counterplan, I-law, and inequality. If you're like, I didn't listen to this great flowing advice I've heard elsewhere, and I'm worried about my overview length, just put it right at the top of the solvency debate, okay? So it's going to be about solvency. All right, is anyone not ready? Anyone have good? All right, cool. The 2AC is right. This is probably the 2NR. It's not because I'm obsessed with it. It's because week 1 of the SDI called it once it states counterplan answers back. It takes 2 actions that solve the entirety of the case. 1, it establishes and enforces a state-based constitutional right to education. That ensures the same ability to sue. The only difference is the venue, which has no impact. 2nd, it creates a state-specific model of funding. Money is money, regardless of the source. Counterplan even ends local streams for greater state funding, which resolves all their status quo flaws at any moments in cross-ex where you thought that I didn't sound perfect. 2 framing points. 1, we win if the counterplan is better than the status quo, even if the plan could be spun as better, because we're sufficient improvement to mitigate inequality and send an international signal of compliance with norms. 2, any solvency deficit links them to the AF has to be implemented by the state. Vergarian 10, the federal government has been increasingly trying to promote uniform objectives. However, the federal government lacks political and technical capability to implement its education policies, and most reliant state cooperation takes shown very little of interest. Many states were reluctant to improve. Now the counterplan leads to federal follow-on. Star this. Empirics prove that it eventually results in the AF. Meta on 13, consensus around reform made growth for federal local state standard legislation and goals reauthorization of ASA and NCLB meeting between Bush and governors is whether the first step towards reform. The state reform game governors experience with standards creating a wide base of support behind the vision at the federal level. Critical capacity of the ACA helps to develop the framework for reform, providing critical direction and support. Federal legislation was crafted to expand upon the existing efforts of federal policymakers and advocacy groups simultaneously to plan state action to claim legitimacy for federal reforms, but criticizes slow and pace reforms to argue that more strategic federal measures are necessary by creating a movement of state reform enabled the federal government to expand its influence by creating a state consensus upon which the federal government could piggyback. And familiarity reduces opposition that causes follow-on to golden and 99 state action frequently influences Congress and increases the feasibility of federal action because familiarity aids in the process. Legislators understand the politics and agencies know how to administrate groups, know where they stand, experience guide legislative drafting to simulate support from among the populace action at the state level, spurs more forms of federal policy action. Permutation do both. Links to politics but includes federal action. That'll be the 1NR. Anything else severs. That's voter for negative ground. No shielding argument because the AF and the counterplan are simultaneous. If anything, they facilitate more Trump backlash and fighting up the plan for being confusing and duplicative. They have a hidden links to the net benefit argument. The counterplan doesn't link because there's no immediate federal action. Even if I'm wrong, view it on a sliding scale. Debate and political capital are not binaries. If the counterplan links less, you vote negative. Independently, we have an implementation DA to the permutation. They cause state backlash begin at 90. New policy create new politics, education, spur mobilization, interest group, new insurance, and cross-cutting coalitions expand federal laws, cause states to push back and has made Congress recant their initial support policy research and take other rapid changes in education policy as a constantly the future direction of federal school reform efforts. Now, the solvency debate. They say the counterplan is necessary to solve for inequality. Our Bromley evidence changes the structure of Constitution. That gives a hook for the court's decision making that allows shifting funding. It also allows political covenant for governors and forces new tests and standards to improve it. It also applies strict scrutiny to the state courts, which makes it more likely that they're able to solve it. We also saw funding. Our Brown evidence says it moves away from property values, which is the flaw of the status quo, because state funding for schools is based upon rich communities, which creates insular localities. More warrants. They say it's not enforced. That is solved because it includes it in the state constitution. They say then you